My name's Pat Grady. I'm a solution engineer at AdSwerve, and I'll be walking you through the foundations of digital marketing. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, today we're going to be checking out the Google Cloud Jumpstart solution. So let's go ahead and just run a search for that. And pretty much the blog article or the guides will kind of show up. And so let's just go ahead and click on those. And the thing that you will need is actually a Google Cloud Platform account. When you create an account for your own personal purposes, you get a $300 credit to work against. And of course, at the end of this installation, we're going to actually delete the whole thing. So you can pretty much feel confident that you can follow along just using your own personal account created in the Google Cloud Platform with their $300 budget. And otherwise, if you can provision an instance within your work environment, make sure you go and follow all the rules that your particular work environment has for doing such a thing. But this is absolutely just for demonstration and sort of tutorial and educational purposes. So with that said, let's go ahead and just take a quick review over the Jumpstart solution. So these solutions are sort of pre-written applications that are pretty much full stack. They build out everything that you need to run these different type of workloads. So we're going to be deploying a dynamic website, but there's others like the 3-tier web app that actually has a Redis backend, which is really cool, super fast, performant, very modern, creating analytics lakehouses, etc. So lots of things that are sort of ready for enterprise applications that can take on massive scale, massive availability, global availability, and all these different concepts. So in our sort of lecture version of this particular series, we talked about the HTTP request lifecycle, we talked about cookies, all those things, and I want to show you what it looks like to actually technically deploy a dynamic web app using a Google Cloud backend. Cloud Run is going to be the particular web app architecture that we're going to be using, and we'll sort of tie in how Cloud Run acts as the controller, Firestore acts as the model, and then the React and Next.js front end working together to sort of render the view for us. So let's go ahead and remember that this was sort of the architecture that we're working in, and there is actually a solution guide that we can follow along. So we're going to go ahead and click into that. It's going to say that this is the dynamic web app solution with Jumpstart. So that's great. If we just follow along, it basically walks you through everything that's needed, lots of informative links. So definitely, spend the time working on those things. We're going to kind of move this through a little quickly, just so you can kind of have a reference. If you're following along and having issues and struggling, I think that the purpose of this video is to actually let you follow along. And then if you missed anything in your own installation, maybe you can see where what I did. And then also you can kind of see if I'm banging my head against the keyboard, you can kind of see my troubleshooting approach to get around that. So let's just take a look. So we're going to be deploying a publicly accessible web application using Cloud Run. That's great. We're going to be exploring the deployment, customizing the application. At some point, we might deviate from this particular guide because I think the guide is for whatever reason like outdated and doesn't actually work. So you might run into problems there, but we'll go ahead and get started. So it says deploy the solution. The first is to go to your project selector. So when you click on that, it opens up your actual project. And so actually, this was the old installation that I did. You could see it's been running for several days, and it's incurred exactly $0 of cost. And let's go ahead, and I said that this project would be deleted. Let's actually delete this project. So we're going to shut it down. It's fairly easy to delete projects. You only want to delete projects when you're absolutely certain that it needs to be deleted. This was my previous environment that I threw away, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing at the end of this particular tutorial. We will be deleting our own project. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and follow along. So it says open up the project selector, select your project. We're actually going to create a new project, and we'll say this will be deleted again. There's no organization if you're just doing your personal. Of course, if you're within an organization and setting things up, make sure that you're following your IT guidance, and they'll probably provision a project for you. But for me, I can just create a project, and so now it's creating. And we see the first deleted one is gone now. You can kind of keep track of what's going on with some of the backend stuff that's working over here in this little indicator. We'll also be using the Cloud Shell at some point. I'm going to go ahead and get that activated just because when you spin it up for the first time, it takes a little minute to provision itself. So let's jump back to the solution here. So we create a project, click create the project, give it a name, and click create. So the project ID is different than the project name. Whenever you are dealing with a project, there's the ID, there's the name, and there's the number. All that information can be found. We can go ahead and close this. All that information can be found in the Hamburger Bar Cloud overview. The very first card, oops, unless if you move it like I just was about to do, will have the project name, the project number, and the project ID. The project ID has to be universally unique. So if it tells you that it's not unique, then it will force you to sort of give it a different name, which is fine. It's really just a reference to this. But the project name, typically you make a nicer name than just this, but and more informative, but this is just a demo. Get the required permission. So if you were provisioned in instance, you might not have the right permissions. You need to send this list to your IT team so you can get the appropriate permissions. Otherwise, the way that you do that is you go to the the hamburger menu, and then if you typically won't see all these pinned items. So what you do is you go to more products and then look for the thing called IAM and admin. You can also just type that into the search bar up here. Whoops. IAM and admin. There it is right there. When you click on it, it takes you to sort of the user configuration. Now, if you created and provisioned this environment, you're the owner. That's just the way that it works. So I'm logged in with this account and I am the owner of this project. You can do everything. You have the absolute highest permission. Now, if someone provisioned this instance for you, then you would have to give them this information. And so there's this service usage admin. So we're looking for the predefined roles. That's a slightly broader access pattern than the specific IAM permissions. So your IT team can create a role and add these 5 permissions explicitly, or they can add these different larger roles that include these permissions, but they also include a lot of other things in them. So it just depends on how secure and how locked down the particular environment needs to be. I'm going to go ahead and just add these. Again, you don't need to, but I just want to show people how to do this. So we're going, I think, edit. Yeah, we're going to edit this user, and we're just going to add new roles, and we're going to type in that thing that we just selected. There it is, storage usage. Now that is a duplicate permission because owner has access to everything, but that's what we're doing just to demonstrate what's going on. So there's 2 now, and we just have a few more. It looks like 2 more. And we select the role, copy and paste that in, project IAM admin, and another role. We're going to do this cloud infrastructure manager admin. So lots of roles. Turns out that, whoops, I think I copied too much. Yes, I did. So let's just copy that right there and then go try that again. All right, there it is. So now, and we just save that configuration, and now my user has lots of things. It's all duplicative because the owner has everything, but if you didn't, then that would be it. Otherwise, you would have to create your role from scratch, which I think you can do under IAM somewhere in here. I don't do that very often, as you can see. I don't know where you would do it, but you can create your own role. You would just really type in role. Pretty much anything that you want to do, you can just search for, there it is, roles. You would be able to, there it is. Also, I was looking right at it. You can create a custom role that has these explicit permissions. All right, we spent a lot of time on permissions. That's always the thing that holds people back, though. It's always access that seems to get in the way. So that's probably good that we spent a little bit of time on it, but probably super boring for people that were actually owners from the get-go. All right, so service account created for the solution. When we run the process, it's going to actually create service accounts. That's fine. You can revoke the service account after the solution is run if you wanted to further lock down the environment. Again, your IT team should be following these instructions if you're asking them to do it for you. Otherwise, that's just sort of extra information that you may not know. Obviously, a demo environment, you don't need to be too concerned about locking it down. Through the console, we're going to either deploy through the console or using the Terraform CLI. Now, I like to show the Terraform CLI. It's just that failed on me miserably the last time that I tried, so we're going to try deploy through the console. And when we click deploy through the console, it just takes us down to this little section right here called deploy to the console. And now we're just going to follow these instructions. So in the Google Cloud Jumpstart solution, go to the dynamic web application solution, which is this right here. If we click that, then it takes us to this particular solution, and it's just going to tell us to deploy. So they've built out, and it looks like it's going to start at 3 cents an hour. That's actually not true. It will spin down most likely if it's not being used, and actually taking zero compute. So I think they're assuming that you're going to reserve a static IP, and maybe that's actually what that is. It might reserve a static IP, which does have a little bit of cost associated with it. 3 cents an hour on a $300 credit. It's going to get you pretty far. None of the APIs are enabled, so we're going to go ahead and just deploy the solution. And I believe what it's going to do is enable all those APIs. So here it is. Dynamic web app with JavaScript is deploying. It's step 1 of 3 is enabling the APIs and services. And you can kind of check on some of the status here. You can basically walk away, I think, for the most part, and it will just do everything in the back end. And this might be a point where I sort of pause the video and we'll resume whenever this process is complete. Okay, it looks like we're getting very close to finishing. So I've just been sitting here watching these little green check marks sort of show up, and pretty much all of them are there. And so what this is saying this is a sort of managed deployment service that has been pre-configured and pre-coded for you. There's basically the type of scripting called Terraform that's running in the background, and that's infrastructure as code. And what it's doing is configuring all of these different resources within the Google Cloud Platform. It's creating IP addresses, it's creating a content delivery network, it's creating a sort of web server backend architecture using containers deployed to Cloud Run. It's enabling lots of different services and APIs. So Firestore and service uses and Cloud Build and Secret Manager, all the different things that are going to be used. It's generating some random IDs to be leveraged for security purposes, I'm sure. It is configuring the Secret Manager, is configuring the permissions likely for the service account that it creates. Yeah, the run service account. Cloud Run needs to run with a service account. So that's what it is. And lots and lots of storage containers. So it deployed all of these different assets. These are logos, SVGs, or sort of graphical assets. It looks like, yeah, I just dumped a bunch of items into a cloud storage bucket. That cloud storage bucket, actually, if we go and look at it, remember, everything's sort of just working on the back end. You can click around and sort of explore this environment without any consequence. It will continue working on the back end, even though you're sort of poking around. So under more products, way down, so it's organized by compute, distributed cloud, serverless, storage, storage. So we're looking for cloud storage. I like to pin things so that it shows up at the top. And there it is. The things that I use most often, I like to pin. So it did create a dynamic web app bucket. And if I click into that bucket, one of the things that we'll likely see, it is public to the internet, which any web page that's publicly accessible needs to be configured as public to the internet. So they make sure that they tell you that it's public to the internet. Because it has the permission all users or all authenticated users have permissions to the assets. And the assets are these icons. And so that's all those SVGs that we saw it created and deployed. So if we go back to the solution, then we'll actually see, oh, yeah, there's actually maybe even more. Oh yeah, there's a 50 of 100. So if we let's show 200, it's just lots and lots of SGVs. Look at all those. The web application itself is like a guide to help you work through lots of different solutions and all the technologies that you touch. It has a logo of those technologies like Looker, natural language, IoT, Internet of Things, real world insights, and you can it's a gamified experience where you sort of be checking off those. You'll see it in just a minute. And so I think I jumped the gun just a little bit. Well, let's just go take a look at everything else. So there's Cloud Run, there's Cloud CDN, there's an IP address. Let's actually go look at that IP address. So the IP address is a static IP address that we can see within our VPC, or virtual private cloud. So that IP address is actually accessible to the internet. And let's see what it does when we go to it now. Yep, sure enough, there's an application running and being served. So even though the solution is still technically deploying, it has enough deployed where it was able to actually spin up the application. It does want us to sign in. This might fail miserably because I am jumping the gun. I'm going to sign in with credentials, and sure enough, it jumps us in, and we have this environment. I can kind of browse around and kind of see some of the logos that are there. And the technologies that have been deployed in this particular implementation are Firestore. I don't know what that logo is. I guess it's Cloud Run. And then storage. And yeah, so we will continue monitoring our deployment, but that is the IP address that is publicly accessible. Now, when you access an IP address, you don't have the option of securing it. So one of the things that you would need to do is on the load balancer that's being created, you can, of course, you work with your own DNS provider to add that IP address as an A record within that DNS. So like for me, I can create something like a demo.adswerve.com and ask my IT team to deploy that. Okay, it looks like something happened. Yes, we have a green checkbox there, and I probably shouldn't have just closed that panel. But here's the deployment. So we could view the web app, and we could explore the solution, view the documentation, all this sort of corresponding things that goes along with that. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is taking a tour of the deployed web application. I guess I jumped the gun a little bit, and we were doing that. So one of the things I like to do is follow along with these tutorials. So off on the side, when we explore the solution, I think that's actually what this does. Yeah, the explore the solution just opens up this little thing. And so it's like connect to the web app, set up CI/CD, edit and redeploy the app using a pipeline. These are sort of the things that this tour is going to be walking us through. So we're going to navigate parts of the Google Cloud Console, just looking at all these different things. So let's go ahead and start the tutorial. Cloud Run's being used, Firestore, load balancing, storage in the CDN. We talked a little bit about that in the first video, and I guess throughout this we'll talk a little bit more about it. So Cloud Load Balancer. The load balancer is sort of the first endpoint of when I made that request to that IP address. The load balancer actually received that request and then intelligently routed the information to the correct location. And so let's just look at how this is configured. So it says you can see that configuration within network services, and so you can just click that little thing and it sort of shows you exactly where to find that, which there it is. It's under the networking section. We see that we have a dynamic web app, so we're going to select load balancing, which is what we're in. Cannot be found either because it's still loading or does not exist. That's totally not true. It's right there. I'm on it. So that's what I mean. Like their guide is a little bit broken, but we're still going to just try. So backends is right there. It tells you exactly where to click. It's like, okay, cool. We have a bucket backend and we have a run backend service. This is a service that is an HTTP endpoint. So that's the load balancer basically is deciding where to route requests. So it's saying like, okay, I can route requests to this run environment, which is our controller, or I can route requests to our backend bucket, which is basically serving all the assets, all these images that were downloaded. So if we look at this page and actually look at the network requests, we see JavaScript files, we see fave icons, we see these SVGs sort of showing up. Those are being served from a cache. Actually, yeah, I have the cache disabled. So actually, let's look at the headers for this particular request. So it does say cache control, max age 3000. So this is being cached. And now the load balancer, in conjunction with the CDN, the content delivery network, will actually serve that information from a cache, meaning that it will not have to make a full round trip to your server, which is a really performant way of serving applications. Going to a server slows things down. The server has to think about the request and then structure a response and then get the response out. But that's how you do dynamic information. It's very hard to do dynamic from static assets. In fact, those words are sort of antonyms of each other. So go back to load balancing, click the backends. We did that. We're on the backends, and then we're just looking at these buckets. So if we click next, now we're going to look at the Cloud Run service backend. We just click Cloud Run, and there it is. I have it pinned, but that's a nice little shortcut that takes you there. So this is where things deviate. So it says dev journey, but that doesn't exist, obviously. It's called dynamic web app with JavaScript. So I have a feeling things are going to start breaking soon. But here we are looking at the environment. So we saw that very first request come in, and let's turn on auto refresh and let's hit it again. Let's just lots of loading. Banging that web server. At some point we'll see that sort of flurry of requests. We'll probably see like the request count go up higher than 0.1 because that's exactly, I'm going to bang on it a little bit more. Lots and lots of requests. And at some point we'll see those come in. Let's just look at the last 15 minutes so we can see this in a little bit higher fidelity. That was 10:12. It is now 10:13. So at some point this should refresh. Let me disable auto refresh, enable auto refresh. Yeah, we'll see it come in at some point. I'm not lying. I don't think I'm lying. Yeah, it should happen. Well, anyways, let's keep going down. You can look at the revisions. This is just lets you sort of allocate traffic to different backends if we had them. So, for example, I can have an EU backend, I can have a North America backend, I can have an APAC backend. I don't. I just have one backend. I think it's in Iowa. So, auto scaling is important. The maximum number of instances that this container will be deployed is 100. If you need to accept a lot more requests than that, then you would obviously increase that. We don't, because this is a demo environment. But if this was your production implementation, you might want 1,000 max instances or something like that. Depends on the size of your business and how much work each container actually has to do. So in the application logs, let's go back to the logs again, and we can see the actual requests that I was making, which that was me banging on the environment. And then if we look at metrics, hopefully you see that big spike by now. Last 15 minutes. Maybe I lied. Maybe I just can't bang on it hard enough to actually get a bunch of responses. Those might have gone all to the cache. Oh, there's something. Bytes received. So I don't know what that actually means, but anyways, I'm not a network engineer. I'm just going to keep moving on. So network services. Now we're going to look at the CDN. That's a content delivery network. So within the network services, we're going to click that and then click on likely the CDN, Cloud CDN. Oh man, it is just totally broken, isn't it? So content delivery network, we could see that in fact we have a bucket and we have a run service. It's pretty much configured exactly along the lines of the load balancer, which is fine. You can see that our assets or cloud icons are being deployed there. And then in storage bucket, we already looked at that, but we're just going to duplicate that effort. Go to the storage bucket. We see the storage bucket with those public assets. Great. The database. Let's go look at the database. Even though I'm pretty sure there's nothing in it, but we're going to go look at it because I believe there's nothing in it because we actually haven't done anything with the application. Let's go do something in the application. So we're going to collect. I'm creating some inventory for my user. I'm going to collect that, and I'm going to collect this. And so now, oh yay, huzzah, traveler, you have gathered the necessary technologies, and the treasure has been revealed. So I'm going to go get the treasure. Let's look at saving, and now it's moving on to the next stop. So let's go back and look at our Firestore to see if anything's been created. Yep, sure enough. So I now have a users collection, and I have a user that is me. I work for AdSwerve, and I have a sort of completed mission identifier. I've completed this important mission, which is SB8XWRX. Anyways, that's clearly just a randomly generated key, and that's totally fine. So that's all that was done immediately as this application, as I was exploring this application. Now, if I go and collect these three, then I'll probably see a second item that I've won. And so when I complete, what's actually happening, let's clear the network request, and I say complete. And so it actually sent these post requests with the body. It said hey, this is what I did, and it's going to collect to a database. That's just the information, the package of the information that's in there. And we get a response, which is just, I have now 2 completed missions. So I will probably see this particular mission ID in the database now. So if I go and refresh this database, we don't need that. You just have to hard refresh, and there it is. There's my second mission that I've completed. So again, this is all working in super fast real time, low latency, very powerful environment, very cool document store technology called Firestore. I just love it. We actually use Firestore for our customers quite frequently to serve personalized data. We might run predictions using machine learning about the customers that have visited the website, either anonymous or non-anonymous customers. Anonymous would be using Google Analytics cookies. Non-anonymous would be using whatever identity service is being used to manage logins, which I highly recommend using the Firestore or Firebase authentication methodology. But let's go ahead and keep moving on with the tour. So if I go back to my deployments, or deployment manager, I think it's actually solutions. Let's go look at, our solution deployments. So if you type in, if you get lost, then just type in the solution deployments and it'll take you back. And then remember, we just, we click into this, and then we can say explore this solution, and then we just go down to where we left off. We left off at we're going to take a tour of the application. We left off right around Firestore. So where's Firestore? All right, there's Firestore. Oh, we already did that. Go ahead and click next. Oh, we already did that. We don't need to do that again. aha, yay, that tutorial was actually pretty bad. It was kind of broken, so now you can go to the more tutorials. We can back up the Firestore database, we can update the application, do all those kinds of things. I think for now, I just really wanted to demonstrate the fact that we're actually serving an application, and then what we'll do in later episodes is actually add Google Analytics to this, we'll add Tag Manager to this, we'll do some machine learning and do lots of different things. So for now, we're going to go ahead and log this off, and I bid you adieu and stay tuned for future episodes.